but we're speaking on Neanderthals. And a lot of the conversation on Neanderthals actually has a lot to do with anti-racism. Because if you look at the picture behind me, you can see where we've finally morphed our understanding of Neanderthal, but you can also see where we started out with this understanding, using this understanding in a very racist way. The picture to this side, this picture right up here is no, I'm not. I'm not single. I have a partner. I'm also poly. I'm not white, but thank you. And you know what? You're a racist and an asshole, and you have been reported, and you are being blocked. So you can F the right the off. Okay? Honey, my pie. So when we look I am turning the comments off. I apologize for anybody who wants to ask actual questions. There is the YouTube. The name of the YouTube is behind me so that you can go over there and you can actually go and ask. Good morning, Wicked. You can go and ask questions on YouTube. It kind of gives it a step block. If you are on my old YouTube channel, that's my family's YouTube channel. So I'm kind of shutting that one down as a following YouTube channel. And we are now streaming live from the new YouTube channel. And you're absolutely welcome to find us on it. Again, it's up behind me on the picture and follow over there. If there's issues over there, my camera's red. So Wicked, if there's any issues in YouTube, like if it's not showing right, let me know. My ears are itchy today. So the picture right there behind me, this kind of hulking brute, is how racism was used, or how part of how evolution and the theory of evolution was used, and part of how the discovery of Neanderthal was used to kind of double down on the creation of race theory and kind of awesome, thank you, and kind of create this scientific idea that there is actual race, which kind of doubles it down in humanity. We had started othering, which is what this is, based on race after 1492 when Europeans land in Turtle Island and start eradicating people there. And to justify it, they use the doctrine of discovery and manifest destiny. And they decide that race, or the idea that other species or groups of human that at this time, because they're still very biblical, they believe are obviously God's lesser beings, though they see, of course, the indigenous people of Turtle Island as being closer to God. They still have to have this idea of why it's okay to butcher them, right? Why it's okay to treat people like cattle, right? Because that's what chattel slavery means, is you've turned people into cows, right? So we see that race othering based on race really starts with the discovery of Turtle Island. We're very global before that as a species. And all of Eurasia and well, probably not Australia, but all of Eurasia and Africa had already been part of the European sphere, and they already knew about different colors of skin, and they have never based othering on those different colors of skin until they get to Turtle Island. They instead based othering on barbarians in the hills versus the cities, or my city is better than your cities, or my religion is better than your religion and your religion is sin. And then they start with race when they get to Turtle Island. And again, race is just a justification for destroying people. Race is just a justification for why you get to be a butchering, murdering savage. Because Europeans are the savages. They are the dirty, disgusting, living in filthy cities and spreading disease savages. Okay. So when we first discovered Neanderthal, we still believe that humanity is only 5,000 years old. And the humanity that is 5,000 years old is based on the Bible. God created us. There's nothing before us, right? The first discovery of Neanderthal is a skull cap. This part, right? I think it kind of down. I can't remember if it's all of it or if it's just the cap. And this is why we named the species Neanderthal, because this is found in Neander Valley in Germany. I think it's Germany. It's a German word, but I think it's in Germany still. Um, and when they find this in Neander Valley in Germany, they think that this is a human with some weird disease morphology. And in thinking that this is a human with some weird disease morphology, they have decided that they're going to study and see what the disease morphology is to kind of put it aside. And it's not until they find another one that they go, oh, well, this is different. And at the same point, Darwin's theory of evolution is coming out onto the forefront, right? So with these two things, we start to see this understanding that we are evolving. And in this understanding that we are evolving at a time period that they're also trying very hard to justify atrocity, they decide to develop race theory when they're developing the theory of evolution. And this is how they develop eugenics, which is developed here in America. By the way, we should be proud here in the United States that we are the ones that gave Hitler all of his fucking ideas. America has the best racism. Apartheid came to us. We're so good at our racism. It's one of the things we're number one in, like maternal mortality rates and mass incarcerations. Yay, us. Aren't we just divine? Anyways, back to so this image right up here behind me, this hulking beast, is actually the image that first comes out, and actually the image that we see displayed for quite some time about Neanderthal. This is who we think of Neanderthal as, this hulking, grunting brute. Even Gina Mall's Earth Children series does not picture Neanderthal as having language or having the ability, having verbal language, or having the ability to develop new ideas. Even Gina Mall's Earth Children series looks at Neanderthal as somebody whose ideas come from a memory, if you remember, right? As it's a memory imprint. If you have actually read the books as opposed to the movies, right? It's a memory imprint that they get from their ancestors in their brain. It's like every other animal on the planet, that or like with us with suckling, right? It is something that's imprinted in our brain as a memory retention that is necessary for species, right? And so even Gina Mall's Earth Children series thought that the Neanderthals worked in that way too. And the reason that their brains were so big and that the reasons that they were dying out is because they were trying to retain so much memory. And as they were learning new things and storing that memory, TikTok has gone down. Um, uh, TikTok live has gone down. I'll go ahead and stay over here for a little while. Let me fix this so that it's all the appeal has gone through, and we'll post a little video and let people know to come find us over here. '24th. Let me. Sorry, I know it's a huge pause over on this side, and I apologize. I just want to make sure that we can get out the information so that people know. Live access was suspended on talking about why race theory is incorrect. You can find me. See you. Bye. I don't want to do it that way. I know, right? Live access is suspended due to talking about how race theory is incorrect and has been disproven. You know where to find me. I'll see you there. I'm still going. Oh, fuck off. Why does it do that? See, this is why I have so many problems doing videos because I have to figure it out every single time. You're going to watch me do this 3 times. Live access is suspended on TikTok because we were talking about why race theory was debunked, and that was taken as hateful. You know where to find me. I'm still going. See you there. Okay. Sorry about that, but we're here. Um, though I do believe I'm knocking things around trying to take stuff down. So when we're looking at the picture that I was showing, what we're seeing is that that brute, that grunting, unable to create, unable to make new things, unable to understand new things, brute is absolutely the reasoning why race theory not only uses and depicts this is primitive is and kind of morphs the image. It takes not only the mid-face prognosis and makes it a little bit heavier. It also and it's not up, so it's a little bit harder to see, and I can't background on YouTube. But it also takes that kind of stooping, hunched gait, right? It gives this idea, it makes arms longer than they are, it makes stance less upright, right? It's actually taking it back kind of that step on that we've all seen that picture that shows evolution of man where it's like the ape all the way up to the man today. Sometimes it has a cell phone, sometimes like it goes from the lizard all the way up, sometimes he's turning around going go back, we fucked up, which is my favorite. But though that hulking and it does this and then relates this to blackness. And when it does this and relates this to blackness or relates this to being African, what it does is it creates this doubling down in imagery surrounding race theory. And in this doubling down in injury surrounding race theory, it gives humanity a very real cognitive connection to the idea that race exists when we know now that race does not exist, right? And in that, giving humanity or humans a way to see it so viscerally, because we are talking about a time where we're also really mass producing image media, right? The printing press is a couple of 100 years old by this time, but with the printing press being a couple 100 years old, on top of us starting to actually get stuff out to a public as the crass lower class crowds, as often they are described, but the milling teams, right, like the people who are not thought of as having the intelligence and often not given the skill to read, right? uh so it's sending this out on an imagery level, giving us that first mass media of imagery, really, and giving us that propaganda within it. And that propaganda within that mass imagery of media, and mass imagery of doubling down on the idea of race theory, right? Doubling down on the idea of race. This propaganda within that really creates this space where you find it impossible for it not to creep into everything you do and everything you see, right? And we see that this creeps along and really becomes a part of all of our media, right? It's used often today when we're talking about immigrants or homeless people, houseless people, or when we're talking about, we used it in the 90s and the 80s a lot when we were referencing the hood or the ghetto, right? Um, and I mean, both terms that we have used before to well, not hood, because hood comes from neighborhood, but which is a later thought process. But the ghetto is something that we have used before, you know, through ages as a place that are groups of people. Usually, it's Judaic. Like throughout the ages, it's been Judaic, just because that is a lot of that intermix and since the start of Christianity taking over as a state religion in 400. And even before that, by the Romans, you see that Judaism and Jewish people, Judaic people, are subclass. Like they're put into a class that's below the rest, right? Um, and so with this, you see that we've related being below with terms like ghetto, with terms like hood, and then we take media and create this imagery that this is what this means, ignoring all the outside things. I'm working on a lot of psychological stuff, right? Because I'm trying to do my PTSD stuff. Um, and one of the things that I'm working on is uh, this thing called patterns of problematic thinking. And one of the things in it is ignoring important parts. When we look at things like that, what we're looking at is the surface level and what affects the surface level. We're not looking at, or we're looking at what the surface level is and the interactions within the surface level. Sorry, not what affects, but the interactions within the surface level. We're not looking at what affects that. Why? Ignoring all of the other important parts that have something to play within this, right? We don't look at over policing as being a part of the problem. We want to think that over policing is a part of the solution, right? Which it is absolutely not. So, um, as we move that forward, we absolutely see. Hold on, I want to check that this is going through. As we look at that, we absolutely see where imagery, and specifically that imagery, has really played a part in the creation of the theory of race and in the creation of this idea that race is about, you know, intelligence or uh, really an existent thing that dictates by external visualization what an internal process is, right? Really, race is the theory of race is reading a book by its cover, right? We have this one side that says, don't read a book by its cover. We have this other side that says, well, dependent on your skin color will tell us your IQ, which is jack all shit right at all. Like, that's not real. Good morning, Rudy. So we see absolutely that um, one second. Um, when we look at that, we really see that there's this effect of it down through the ages. And we, I think, know this. Anyways, like if we really look at it and we really think of it, we see that imagery has really affected the way that we view different groups of people. I know that anybody that belongs to one of the marginalized groups that imagery has been used against truly understands that. We actually talk a lot about it within Indigenous communities when it comes to mascots, right? Because there's a lot of groups still who are using indigenous imagery in a negative pattern and characterizing it, making caricature of it. And in that, it's doubling down on the image of Indigenous people, A, as being extinct, and B, as usually being something not uh, accurate and something that is negative, right? Like our connotations have twisted these things into negativities. Some things aren't actually negative, we've just twisted them in a way that's negative. But because of that, we see this harm through imagery. And so we absolutely see that our first imagery of Neanderthal did a lot of harm. It caused a lot of issue. Um, what we need to be effective of and understand with that imagery, though, is that we can now use that to understand race theory and to debunk it and to show what is wrong with that kind of thinking, right? That doesn't mean that, we're not victim blaming in it. It's not like, this is what we should have done all along because now we have this that we can have from it. But what it does mean is that if we work really hard at returning to the idea that we should learn from the mistakes of our past, right? And try and do better, then we can absolutely take a look at this mistake and go, okay, listen, othering has not been working for us. And look at how bad we've gotten at it that we can other people within our own neighborhood, within our own families, right? Look at how bad we've gotten at othering. Um, so, I liked the image this morning. I didn't see the image this morning as being racist at all. I do understand at times when I get called or told that I'm being racist because I have images of Erectus or Neanderthal up that are dark of skin. I totally understand that it is that imagery that brings that thought process into space, right? That tells us that is why, right? That imagery is why we believe that. But I also know like the image that I brought up, the reason I got that one was, and the reason I was like, oh, this morning I'll use that one instead. I'm so glad I have this one because it's a side by side and it shows it shows that we've changed that racist imagery, that we're trying to correct that racism within within our thought process and trying to show that correction of racism, right? Trying to show that that race doesn't actually exist within that, and that this is not something that has anything to do with race. So I'm a little bit amused by the fact that it was a hate speech ban. We'll see. Uh, we'll see. TikTok is unfortunately rather interesting with its regulations. I saw somebody refer to it as the TikTok gods. Yo, TikTok gods. What the fuck? And I was like, mm-hmm, right? Um, capricious and attempting to be omnipotent without really being omnipotent, and final authority with no recompense, right? Uh, so I thought it actually kind of fit really well with our idea of what gods are these days. So within this, with Neanderthals, with the differences that we're looking at, and so I'm going to go ahead and put the website in chat. I cancel. I don't want to do that. Put the website in chat and pull up our images for this week. Medicine and food. So the widdaord.com website under this week will pull up images that we can go over and so that you can see different things. I'm not going to go over them by the image themselves. I am going to talk about the subjects of the images, and then I'm going to let you take a look at the websites that are on there because I did include the entire websites instead of just images. And that way you can scroll through the websites. You can do it as we're talking, or you can take a look after and read the websites as well. But you can see some of the pictures within the websites. I'll probably pull up a couple of them just to make sure I get my facts as close to correct for now as possible, Um, I know that I'm valuable, and I often uh, misplace things in my head, or haven't found that information yet, or that information just isn't available to the public until 2 years from now, right? But I try and be as correct as possible. So, what we are talking about this week is medicine and food with a Neanderthal, and what we see with medicine and food with a Neanderthal. This for me is a really cool one. This is my favorite aspect of Neanderthal, or at least medicine is my favorite aspect of Neanderthal. And the reason that medicine is my favorite aspect of Neanderthal is because the idea that medicine goes back that far, that our knowledge that the environment around us has all we need to heal ourselves within it, going back to Neanderthal, to me is an extremely beautiful thing. Like, to me, that's like, holy fuck yes, right? Like, oh my god, really? This is really what we are doing. um so I really enjoy that, right? And I think for me, this starts with Earth's Children series. So I first discovered Neanderthal as a coffee table book at my great grandmother's house. My mother's grandmother, who had raised her, who I love. She was always my favorite grandmother. She was amazing. She is the one that taught my mother to follow her indigenous heritage, and taught my mother to follow her Black heritage, right? Taught my mother what it had been for her mother's mother to pass, and taught her family, you know, these very innate portions of us that give me personally the ability, uh, that give me personally the ability to see. It's the foundation of that understanding that because I belong to all groups are my cousins, right? That because I have background from everywhere, I should be looking at the background of everyone through their own voices, right? Because of the way she taught me history, because she taught me this stuff as I was learning to read, here's this word, read this page, these words mean this, as she's teaching me this stuff, and it's out of Black and Indigenous works on Black and Indigenous history, and out of archaeological works proving Indigenous histories. Um, because that's what she taught me with, by the time I'm starting to take a look at it, I'm looking at it through this idea and understanding that I belong to all of those parts. Whether or not all those parts claim me is not necessary. My ancestors were all of those parts. And as an ancestor worshiper from the moment I can breathe, that is something that's important. And so when I learned about Neanderthals through this grandmother, it was as a coffee table book. And it was the understanding at the time. And I don't really remember a lot of the words, but I remember these big spreads of pictures and these blurbs, right? And I just remember being fascinated. And this is still, again, at a time where we don't believe that they speak, and we don't believe that they can create new things. We believe that we've evolved from them, and we believe that we can't create new things, or that Neanderthals can't create new things. That they are, in some effect, basal. So I'm going to use the term basal instead of primitive, because I like this terminology better than primitive. Basal means the root of all of us, basically, right? It is the our skeletal structure is a basal structure, because we know this goes so far back in Turtle Island, or sorry, comments, so far back in the history of us to a last common ancestor, that we have the same skeletal structure as our dog does, right? That that we have the same arm and limb structure as many of our four-footed relatives, as even as birds, and as well, all mammals, right? So when we look at that, those are they go so far back, right? They take that so far back that basal isn't about lack of skill or knowledge, but about foundation. Okay. And so I like the idea of the word basal. I was reading an article discussing actually this kind of subject last night when I was doing some research, and I like the idea of basil over primitive. I do not belong to a tribe. My grandmother Nani was Red Paint Clan Eastern Band Cherokee, and my grandmother Polly was her grandchildren, and her children were registered as Quapaw, but the DNA shows her as Miwok, and I don't mean ancestry DNA. I mean DNA that actually connects with pre-contact sites, because I have access, and I can show you where to get access to sites that will show you connection to archaeological sites. Um, and I was raised, my second mother is a Haida woman, and she's also something good, but I was raised with her among the Haida community until I was about 5. And then my mother and my dad, who raised me, they don't like being around people. So they moved us in the middle of the woods. And we lived in a teepee on the side of the mountain in Eastern Washington until I was 10 and we came out of the mountains. And during this time, we also participated. There was a Islamic group who had come over from Iran in the early 80s. And so I lived for like a year myself with that group and would go home with my parents on the weekend because it was a school group. Um, so I had a lot of interaction, primarily with indigenous communities first, and then with other different non-American communities, non-United States communities, before I really got involved with the United States. When we came out of the mountains at 12, I ended up on the Swinomish Res up north. First, we went back to my second mother, who is, well, she passed a couple years ago. Her children are my family members, and they would tell you that. And she was my family member up until she passed. And it's still, I still consider her family. And she would still consider me family. And we went back with her for a couple of years. And when I was 12, we moved from there to the edge of Swinomish. And I spent a couple years on the edge of Swin, and lived with and considered myself married to, and still remain in contact with his family, even though he has passed. Half Swin, half Upper Skagit man. So my connections are blood connections, but my main connections are family connections from my childhood. But I do not belong to, nor claim to belong to any nation. Um, I'm also not claiming indigenous privileges, right? I'm also not, trying to take. I uplift, I don't take, right? That's a huge thing to me. Anyways, so um, that's an important question. If you are not indigenous to Turtle Island, you don't realize that that's an important question. I wanted to finish the other thing I was saying before I answer that question, but that is a very important question. And so I absolutely am willing to answer that. Um, and hopefully that makes sense to you, and you understand why I say it in the way I do. Um, so, and really that was only about, that foundation of understanding. It wasn't about the subject today, because the subject today is really about Neanderthals, right? Which predates all of that. So I did hear somebody recently talking about how Neanderthals have made it to Turtle Island, and how Turtle Islanders were who Neanderthals had speciated from. I think I got tagged in on it, and I was just too exhausted last night, and I have to go and look at it again. But that's something that we'll have to address. That's not who was here. It is possible that it was the giants that were here. We do know it's another Homo erectus species that was here 130,000 years ago, but it was not Neanderthal. Back to the subject. So when I first started learning about Neanderthal, from that coffee table book, I then took it into reading the Earth's Children series. The first book of the Earth's Children series, Clan of the Cave Bear, was handed to me when I was 12. And aside from some imagery that probably should not have entered into my early budding mind, um, there's a lot of really powerful shit within it. And a lot of really powerful shit within it is the medicine. And for me, that was like very impactful. Along with, teaching me to read in these ways, my mother also taught me to be very connected to herbology and medicine in the land and energy, and interactive with nature, right? And healing was something that my mother and my second mother and all my aunties, like the entire group of women who raised me, all taught me healing very early. And so for me, there was this intense connection. And to this day, I remember Issa's bag. Issa's bag is a medicine bag that is made by, or is made by taking the whole body of, oh fuck, I can't remember the beast. I want to say it was like a beaver or a river otter. Maybe it was an otter. Maybe it was an otter bag. Anyways, but it was a whole small animal that was a waterproof animal, and the head created the top part, the cover of the bag, and inside she had bunches of little leather bags, and all of them were knotted strings. All of them were closed by a string that knotted together, and the number of knots on the string indicated what herb was in that bag. And for me, reading this at 12 really imprinted the way that I work and think, right? Even today, all of my purses, all of my backpacks all have a ton of little bags. They're all different sizes and they're all different colors. So I can see automatically textures, so I can feel and know what they are inside just by reaching inside, even today. And this is because of reading about Isa doing this with medicine at 12 and interacting this in my mind, right? So medicine was important. And then when you look at Kreb, and Kreb is a real being. Kreb is Shanadar 1. The old man is Shanadar. And all of the imagery of Kreb as having, having had half of his head stove in, being partially blind, being pretty deaf, which doesn't really come across because they didn't believe they spoke very much, being pretty deaf, and having a withered and like the forearm being removed on the right side, and having I think it's the right side. Let me pull that up just to double check what I'm saying on that. And having the leg of that same side being very very he had a he had a blow to the side of the face, right? It's the right. Okay. So the blow to the side of the face damages the nerves, and the blow to the side of, not the side of the face, the side of the head here damages the nerves, and that nerve damages causes atrophy on his right side, and that atrophy in his right side means that they end up having to take his forearm. So this is our first amputation. Like, we've talked about that 31,000-year-old first successful amputation of a lower limb, and this is still extremely important because an amputation of a lower limb is different than an amputation of an upper limb. You you have to learn to walk again, right? You don't have to learn to walk again if your arm's missing. You have to learn to eat with the other hand, right? But you don't have to learn a whole new frigging way of everything, right? You do have to learn a lot of things, right? And I'm not discounting it in any way, but there's a difference between that and a lower limb amputation. Also, there's a difference with the shock to the body in an upper limb amputation as opposed to a lower limb amputation. And it goes back to the body's understanding that the lower limb loss throws you off balance and puts you in a path of predatory behavior. So it's like this mental thing that will double down on the shock if you're awake during a lower limb amputation as opposed to being awake during an upper limb amputation. And this is all medical knowledge that we have within the current medical community. A lot of this was actually garnered during the Civil War when they were losing people during lower limb amputations, unless the people were already unconscious or were given opium, morphine. Let's conflate the two words together. English is a bastardized language, anyways. So within that, we see that the amputation difference is extremely important. But this is our first amputation that we have, and we don't talk about this as our first amputation when we talk about medicine. And so this is pretty important. Uh, but it is the knowledge that they took his right forearm, that he was with a limp, walked with a limp for the rest of his life, and that he was hard of hearing, if not completely deaf in one ear and then partially deaf in the left ear, I believe. And they've actually recently mapped the inner ear bone to be able to tell that with him. Like, they've got pictures which are on the site. If you go to the this week, there's 3 under Shanadar 1. And they will give you pictures of all of this stuff. You'll be able to see his skull too, which is something you can do a little bit easier on YouTube from TikTok, right? You can actually pull up those sites. But if you look at that, the Shanadar 1, you can see his skull and his bones, and you can see they have a picture of his 2 limbs side by side, right? And our upper limbs side by side. Um, So they mapped or they looked at the ear bones, and by looking at the detail and the scarring on the ear bones, they can tell that he was completely deaf on the right and partially deaf on the left, and then completely blind in the right, and had vision in his left, they believe. Um, all of these things, though, are all evidences of medicine, right? So since I read Earth's Children's series, I believed that there was medicine within Neanderthal. When I started going for my degrees and I started studying Neanderthal, I had to go and do research on it and absolutely found some really beautiful research on it. First, we do have evidence within Shanidar 1. All of that stuff is medical evidence, as I come from somebody whose first degree is in radiography, which means I understand bones and I understand surgery and what happens within the bones within the surgery, thankfully, which was really awesome to be able to take into paleoanthropology and anthropology and archaeology. But with that, we see that we're able to tell from the structure of his bones that he would have needed care. Not only would he have needed care, he would have needed that limb amputated. He would have needed care through that amputation. He would have had extensive pain. Um, and he was, they believe, between, so I've seen 40, 35 to 45 and 40 to 50 and 45 to 55. So we'll say between 35 and 55 years of age when he died. As we get better DNA testing, we'll probably see better with that. With Shanidar 1, we do see our best evidence of medicine, but he's not the only one and the only space that we see evidence of medicine within the record of fossils with Neanderthals, as in evidence within the remains. Well, okay, so the other evidence is also within the remains, but like the bones themselves. So, um, under La Chapelle is that picture of new versus old that was on the background of the TikTok. It says new versus old. And again, this is under the this week tab on my website, on the nwiddaord.com website. I should actually pin that so that it's right up there. Okay. Still learning YouTube's streaming system as well, right? So when we're looking at La Chapelle, what we're looking at is, we call him Old Man of La Chapelle as well. And what we're looking at is another being who was old and had a lot of issues within his body. But it is, first we're looking through the morphology. So one of the things is La Chapelle 1 is the image that was used to create the old image of Neanderthals, which is used to create that slumping, hunched, brutish figure, right? That was very much used for racism, very much used to support the theory of race, and very much done so that it could support that justification of their atrocity. So this reconstruction was with a severely curved spine indicative of a stooped, slouching stance with bent knees, forward flexed hips, and a head jutted forward. He thought the low vaulted cranium and the large brow ridge, somewhat reminiscent of that seen in large apes such as gorillas, indicated a generally primitive early human and a lack of intelligence. But we were re-examining by the 1950s. And it showed that many of the features thought to be unique in Neanderthals fall within the range of the modern human variation, and that the old man suffered from gross, deforming osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis, unfortunately, something that I have early, is it's where the bone what reforms your bones, what they call cytoblasts, I think is what it is. What reforms the bone reforms too fast. It's too much of it. And so it creates excess, and that excess will cause like bones to fuse together and things like that. Um, and so what it is that he was severely deformed due to the arthritis. And that he also has degenerative joint disease. Um, and That early reconstruction actually has an opposable toe like big apes, but there is no opposable toe deformity within this Neanderthal at all. This also is really cool because it having been discovered in the early 1900s, they were able to take a picture. And so you'll see the recreation in situ as well. And so you can see him sitting in situ. And when you're looking at him sitting in situ, you can actually see, and again, so if you do not know, in situ means sitting among or like on the layer of. So what we're seeing is the bones as they're in the dig. And you can see that the dig is this square of like, it's probably like 3 by 3, or actually it's disproportionate. So it's probably like 3 by 4, I would say. But among the bones in this are bones that are not his bones. And you see right alongside of what you might at first think is his leg bone, but as you look at it, you realize it's not actually his leg bone. I thought it was his leg bone. On the bottom of it, you see where his pelvis is, and then you see his leg bent up, and that at the knee of that, you're going to see two bones, and one of these two bones is of a two-toed being. It's the bottom leg, the ankle joint, pretty much, and you can see where there's like two large tarsal bones and what look like two large metatarsals. And then next to it is a spine with the blades on the spinal processes, or the blades on the side of the spine, which in humans are kind of small, that are very long and leaf shaped, right? So you can see with this picture in situ that he was discovered among bones from other creatures, right? I'm not sure what the other creatures are. It does say, I'm sure, in one of these articles. Um, but what we're seeing with La Chapelle 1 is that La Chapelle 1 lived in pain for quite some time. He was definitely toothless for probably decades before he died. He lacked so many teeth, it's possible he needed his food ground down before he was able to eat it. And that he had osteoarthritis and degenerative bone disease. And I'm not sure why that site's not in there. I've got another site that actually tells me, I know there's more to that. Like one of his arms was injured, but not like removed, just there was injury as well. I will find that and put that up there. I've got to figure out where I put it and try and make sure that the site that I'm looking at is actually a good site and one that you can access. The problem is that a lot of accredited sites require a paywall, and a lot of I want to make sure that I'm giving an accredited site so that uh, you're getting that. And I also want to say, or make sure that it's new, so that you're getting the latest finds as they're reconstructing these things with a less racist viewpoint, right? Like in 21, they first of all, they think that La Chapelle 1 by the newer thought processes is older than 60 years old. Advanced arthritis in spine column and hip joint, and brucellosis, which, let me see what brucellosis is really quick, but I thought it said something about lungs. Infectious disease caused by bacteria. It's got to be somewhere in the bones. May include joint and muscle pain, fever, weight loss, and fatigue for the symptoms, with belly pain and cough. So It's easily treatable with antibiotics, but of course we don't have that in this time period. Okay, so this one actually looks like a pretty good site, so I'll make sure I'll put this one up, but I must be conflating both, complete sometimes we'll put 2 together when I don't intend to. And so that could possibly be why I'm thinking that there's an arm deformity within him. I'm putting that on the site right now, so it should be there in about 2 seconds so that if you are following along and you want to, you can you can do so. So, when we that's not what I wanted that to be. When we are looking at medicine within Neanderthals, we're not only seeing this within these kind of things within these two skeletal structures, what we're also seeing is evidence within the plaque on the dentition in their teeth. One second. Let me spell that wrong. I'll have to go back and look. Within the plaque in the dentition on their teeth, what we're seeing is a presence of herbology. What we're seeing is herbs within this that have no caloric intake value. So it's not like there's something that they're going to be eating for calories. And they're also extremely bitter. So they don't have a flavor value. And so between the two of them, we do not believe that they're going to be eating them for flavoring, and we do not believe that they'd be eating them for anything else. We also see within those skeletal structures some of the same disease processes or evidences of problems that these herbs would be used for. Some of the herbs are stomach herbs. And I think that there's a couple herbs that are pain herbs that I've seen. I've got a couple articles. The problem with those is those are PDFs that I have personally that I was given access to that I downloaded. I don't know if I can actually figure out how to put them up. I will do my best to put them up so that people can access them. Um, I would not download them and share them though, just because I'm not sure what the correctness is of that. But free information, right? And I do believe in it. So we do see that there is evidence of medicine within the dentition on the teeth. And this is evidence of herbal use within the dentition on the teeth, which makes sense when you look at the evidence within these skeletons that we have that shows that there's advanced medical problems going on, correct? Um, which to me really shows the idea that we are uh, we are so connected to the world itself, right? The world itself gives us anything we could possibly need. The world itself gives us all the food, all the air, all the water, all the medicine, right? All the things that we could possibly need. Not only does it give us all the things that we possibly need for survival, but it's been able to supply us with everything else we need, right? It is elements within the earth that have created the battery that runs everything that you're on, right? Um, so the earth literally gives us anything and everything we could possibly need. When we work in concert with the world, when we work in concert with the earth and with the biome of the earth, we have a deep understanding of that. When we've distanced ourselves from that concert within the biome, we become problematic for the biome and for ourselves. But when we live within concert with that biome and when we're a part of the world around us, we really have this ability to fill every need, right? We were put here, if we were put here at all, to tend. And the reason I say this is because I believe in evolution, right? I I do believe in, a soul or, a spark of energy within you, but I also believe that and I believe that that fits just fine within the idea of the world creating what the world needs to be a homeostatic biome as it goes on. And as something affects it and changes it, it has to enter another homeostatic biome, period. And so the world, in creating the things that it needs to fulfill the homeostasis of its biome, the world itself creates human, Homo, which includes erectus, habilis, Neanderthal, ergaster, Rudolfensis, Lorenzus, right? Like all of these other Homo species, the earth itself creates these so that she can be comforted and tended, and so that the beings on her planet have somebody to help them, right? To uplift them, to move them forward, right? So I absolutely believe that n- being found within Neanderthal means that within that indigenous biome that Neanderthal is living within, all the things that they needed are met, and they knew these things. Your dog knows to eat grass, so he'll vomit. Like if your dog has an upset stomach, your dog will eat grass, so he vomits. Your animals know what they need around them even after 10,000 years of us fucking with them. They still know what they need around them to be able to be healthy, right? So why would Neanderthals not? Why would Neanderthals have less medicine than animals if they're a step above, right? Are there any questions on any of that? We'll talk about food next. It's nice and quiet in here, right? There's not a lot of comments. I'm not quite sure who all we have in here because it also doesn't show me that. And I'm not sure if we even have people in here because I'm also not sure with that. Yay. Is anybody else in here? Could you make some noise and let me know there are people in here because I can't tell as much with YouTube. Um, and oh, okay. I am still learning YouTube, right? And I've been doing so much with this, both YouTube and TikTok. Hi, Elizabeth from Oregon as well. I'm right up on that border area between Oregon and Washington. Thank you, Linus. Thank you, everybody, for popping up and saying something. Um, just so I know, it's a little bit different over here. Thank you. Oh, I love this shirt. Isn't this? Um, I dated this jarhead like right after I got here in 2017. I I was going through a divorce. The custody was supposed to switch every year, and the custody switched from me to my ex, and he started being an ass, and I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't have any recourse. Like there was nothing I could do. The job that I was in was fucking me over every which way because that's what jobs do, and it was Standing Rock, right? I've been wanting to go since May, since April. God, I've been wanting to go since like I first saw things coming across. To me, I remember the stories as a child, and to me, it was that gathering time, like when the seventh generation, when all the colors meet, right? To me, it was that point of time, and so I was like, I've got to go. So I went to Standing Rock, and I was gone for a month and a half, and I come back in December after he used Standing Rock to pull like to file an emergency order stating that I was trying to take the kids to Standing Rock, which I was not. Um, and so with that, I had to move to Portland, where I'm at now. And that move got me here. And I was so traumatized. I had just been on a front line, and then I was dealing with him. And I was for the first time ever dealing with the military sexual trauma because I hadn't dealt with it for over a decade. And so all of this together, and I start dating this jarhead. And I didn't realize at first that he was really phobic and racist. And I didn't see it until like a minute afterwards. And he was also extremely mono. And I was none of those things. And I was just like, not happening. But in the meantime, he bought me this shirt, and I love this shirt. He's long gone. But the blue shirt with the lines of the arms were really great. I he left what I realized, and I was like, okay, well maybe, and I tried talking to him about it, and he'd been shot at 18 in Afghanistan. in the head here, lost his jaw, and it had exited through his skull. And so, like, he had brain damage. And at first, I was like, okay, so this is a farm boy, grew up in Washington and got brain damage, and never has moved past that age of 18. And so I'm like, maybe with a little bit of, like, don't you see where this is wrong? Maybe I can help this person, right? Which I've had to learn to stop helping everybody. But so I gave him that chance and it didn't work. And I was like, I have to go. We were driving down the street and he made a comment about somebody who I think they were transsexual. I'm not sure. And I was like, "You can't say that." I said, "Don't you realize that every time you talk negatively like this, you're insulting me? Like, I'm sitting next to you. Every time you make an insult towards somebody's race, you're insulting me because I'm all of them. Every time you make an insult towards somebody because they're bi or gay or something like that, dude, I'm everything. Like, you can't do this." And I had to get out of the car. Like, I'm done, boo. We're done. We can't do this. But yeah, uh, it was one of those learning situations though. And it was during a time like I actually identified at that time that I couldn't talk because of the PTSD. Every time I tried to say things, I would say the wrong things and I started stuttering. Like I was 40 and I had never stuttered before in my life, but the pile on and the pile on, the pile on, the pile on, right? It just didn't work. I stuttered. I couldn't form my words right for like 6 months. It was pretty bad. It is. Well, and for me, a lot of it's been lessons, but you know, um, he had parts of him that were positive too. Like he also taught me, not like him himself, but like the lessons that I learned from it. He wasn't a bad human, other than he couldn't fucking like he wasn't an angry human would be a better way to say it. It's not like he was a violent or an angry human, but he wasn't. I didn't agree with that moral or ethic, so I can't say it was good or bad. I can't say he wasn't bad because I don't agree with the moral or ethic. But he had that not being angry and stuff like that was at that point of time was something that I really needed because a lot of the people around me have been very angry, right? Yeah, yeah, and that's real. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that they're racist until it's pointed out, right? We all understand that so many people have it so internalized that they can't see that that's not okay until they point it out. Like we were talking earlier, we've you know propagandized things so much, and media creates this image, and so with all of these images, we have this decision that this is just what it is, right? And so we don't see it as being racist; we just see it as being logical. I think a lot of people, and I think that we see it everywhere. you know, I've seen plenty of Black people associate Indigenous people as being certain people, and plenty of Indigenous people associating Black people as being certain people. I really don't care if they associate white people as being certain people because that's prejudice. That's showing that, like that's lived experience, right? Prejudice is okay. Prejudice is a result of lived experience. It's not a result of what somebody else is telling you, right? And so we see that this medial comprehension of it really goes across board. So many people don't understand how internalized this shit is until they face it, right? I would have always considered myself extremely anti-racist. I've been fighting against racism and race theory since I can remember. Like I was standing up and yelling in kindergarten, and I've always been this person going, nope, 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 nope. We're not doing that, right? Don't talk like that around me. Don't act like that around me. But even I have internalized media comprehensions, even though I came to the game late. I didn't have media until I was in my preteens. I think we got a TV at 10 for a short period of time, and then we didn't get a TV again until like 12, and then it was two channels, right? So, but even I had, specific images within my mind. For me, they were all positive images. But even if they're positive, it's like if I one thing that I found was really difficult for me in 2020 is that I innately trust Black and Indigenous women over anyone else. I innately do not trust men as much as I trust women. And if you are a black woman or an indigenous woman, I innately think that you we're good, right? I know that I feel in my soul that you're going to treat me right, right? But I sometimes fail to remember we're not monolithic, right? And we've all dealt with shit. So, well, you may be a black indigenous woman, like an Afro indigenous woman, right? And I may automatically associate that as you are a strong individual, especially, depending on the situation you're in, you're a strong individual and you should be a leader without seeing that things have affected you in a manner that you might not be a good person in that position, right? I automatically trust you. And that in of itself is a racist behavior, right? It's not a negative racist behavior, but it is a racist behavior to monolithicize black women and indigenous women as all being perfect, right? And to expect that then, right? Yes. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I have to learn, and this is a big one for me. I have a couple of really important life lessons. Don't engage with everybody, and don't trust everybody up front. Humans aren't dogs. They're not all good, right? Like, and even with dogs, some have been brutalized, right? I trust everybody up front, and I had to learn, like, and it took me a while. It took me a while to learn not to trust guys, right? But and it did take me a while to understand that trust is something that comes after you've seen somebody's actions for a hot minute, right? Yeah, and that's real. Um, though I also understand a lot of people are like, well, we can't use the don't see color because I used to use that as well. I used to think of it, and the way I thought of it was I wasn't looking at the color of your skin. I was looking at who you were. Like, I didn't, but I also see, and this really goes into that, right? Um, Specifically with residential school survival. Um, the first person that I consider myself married to that I was talking about earlier is the child of residential school survival. Um, he himself was not in residential school, but he was taken young and put into the foster system pre-ICWA, and harmed desperately. And because I saw what come out of that and saw how beautiful the human being was after that, right? I saw his pain, but he was one of those people that was able to be resilient and turn that into um, being more intentful with the way that he interacted with people and understanding. He had issues, of course, because he was dealing with his own trauma, right? Like, but those issues weren't directed towards other people. He was a Scorpio. And so my thought of Scorpios was really positive, right? Um, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. Um, but I've also met residential school survivors or children of residential school survivors where the trauma that was inflicted by the school to the student um, embedded, right? And the student becomes the victim, the best way to put it, right? Because I want to acknowledge, and we use victim as a bad word, and it's not. The person who, without any fault of their own, was harmed and injured has internalized that trauma, and they pass that internalized trauma down. Some people, when they pass that internalized trauma down, the people that they pass it to are able to take that trauma and create something positive for themselves in the way that they interact with others. Like, okay, I really see that I don't like the way this tool works, so I'm going to try a different tool, right? Whereas some people go, oh, that tool worked great for my parents, so I'm going to use that tool too, right? Um, and if I, instead of understanding that there are those both sides of the resilience, decide that because they're indigenous and they went through it, they're all going to react in the same way that Sam did. Um, I I ignore that nothing is monolithic. I then decide that an entire group of people behaves based on my one experience, and that's not correct. Even if it's in a positive, we have a lot of internalized racism within our society. Even if we like, I mean, I never viewed myself as white. I spent like a half a year going, well, I don't know what I am because I was one of my aunts was like, that's not what grandma told me. And I went, okay, well, I'm going to go and do this. And she's like, that's not what my DNA says. Her DNA actually said it. I don't know how she was ignoring it other than her own internalized racism. Um, but until I could figure it out, I wasn't going to tell anybody that I was indigenous or had black ancestry because I wasn't going to be a Rachel Dolezal. So I went through like 7 months where I was like, I don't know who my ancestors are. So I'm not going to talk about my ancestors until I can figure them out because, right. But even I, who have only during that time not known who I was, and only during that time going, maybe I was white, right? You know, but my entire life not thought of myself as white, and my entire life associated my internal self with these other groups, right? Internally have felt a part of these other groups instead of associating my internal self with United States America, right? Um, Even that, I have these internalized racisms. Even when those internalized racisms might be a positive, I still have these things that media has taught me, right? I still have these things that I have to examine and learn. And when people are unwilling to examine and learn, is where the problem really comes in. Um, I can meet somebody and understand that you have internalized racism and you make a stupid comment and I go, "Oh, that's racist." And you go, "Oh shit. How? Please tell me. I don't want to be racist." Right? Or I can say that's racist and you go, "Fuck off." Nuh-uh. Right? And so this, like you're saying, it tells you where to judge, right? Where to move forward. Um, and that's real. You have to, we have to understand that so many people don't see that it's actually a racist thing, right? So many people don't actually understand it as racism. They don't understand themselves as having racism, right? Yeah. Well, and that's somebody asked me what culture I identify with today. And I was like, none. Like I identify with all of them, but I don't identify like I think of myself as indigenous. But I don't just think of myself as Turtle Island indigenous. I think of myself as indigenous. Like my mindset to me is an animistic indigenous mindset. And I have followed the indigenous ancestry of my all of my ancestors. Like I've done bunch of study in it. So I wouldn't identify myself as just being Turtle Island indigenous. Um, I would identify myself as being multicultural. I wouldn't identify myself as belonging to any, right? Yes. And that's another thing, right? And that especially for those of us with the light skin, right? Light skin. I have light skin and gray eyes, right? And they go blue to green to gray. So like one of my parents will tell you they're green and the other one will tell you they're not. But when we're dealing with that, I call it my armor. Since 2020, it's been my white armor. That's actually, what my tag was in 2020 was the white armored Widda. I wore white motorcycle armor that was painted with MMIW and, uh, Black Lives Matter facts, like, different MMIW facts, and then, like, different, in black facts, like, things that are going on around the country. Um, so white motorcycle armor, and, I so my tag was the white armored Widda 'cause, I that's how I view it. I view it as armor. I view it these days as I hated it for a long time. I really hated it, right? Um, and I hated it because it wasn't until I came off the mountain that I understood that my skin was light for indigeneity, right? Like Haida people are pretty light, right? And so the groups that I grew up with were all very light. Like I have a friend whose uncle is half black and half Haida, right? And like when he goes to his Haida family, they're like, you're too dark, right? Because he's dark and they're all my color, right? Um, we do need all colors. We do. We need all of us together. And I truly believe that it is those of us who are mixed that they're talking about when they talk about the rainbow generation. It is those of us who have all of the different um, cultures within us that are going to bring those cultures together to be able to end that thought process, right? And we absolutely need that. We need people who look like me to spread messages because too many people won't listen to anybody who's darker than me. And that's that white armor again, right? This takes me into spaces. This gives me privilege in place. And so to use that privilege and to utilize that privilege to forward the knowledge, to uplift land back, to move us forward into returning to an indigenous conversation and thought process, right? Um, and that makes sense. Yeah. Is that because your son is half? Well, and I think that's the other thing for me. And this is a really important one. Um, I personally don't speak for any indigenous groups. I don't believe it's my right, right? I am perfectly happy to repeat things that I have been told, right? Uh, uplift knowledge that I have been told needs to get out there. Not repeat things that I've been told that are private, like ceremonies or things like that, right? But repeat, we need people to know this. We need people to know this, right? More than happy to do that. Um, but it should always be recognized that the Dene don't need the same thing that the Lakota need, and the Lakota don't need the same thing that the Mi'kmaq need, right? And none of these are the same. I actually was watching a video yesterday, of a girl who somebody told her, "Well, that's not indigenous," and she was like, "From your culture, it's not, but in my culture, it is," right? And you don't get to tell me that based on your nation, something is not indigenous because in my nation it is. And I think it was sweetgrass within her earrings, which I have earrings. It's not these ones. I have earrings with sweetgrass braided around them, and to me, this is Bernie Sanders. Actually, I don't know if it'll show you. This is Bernie at the inauguration. Oh, I don't know how to make it on this camera like um, image. Oh, it's not going to. You can't really see Bernie on it. But this is Bernie in the center. And then this here, right here around, she put a thing here. But this is sweetgrass braid. And then it's stones. I think it's not hematite because it doesn't have a shine. And this is Makata, who is oh, I haven't been on Facebook for so long that I haven't seen her introduction. I think she's Micmac. I know she's in coastal Salish territory, right? Um, but she does sweetgrass braids around almost all of her stuff, which I love because to me, that's prayer. It's wearing prayer, right? So much of my stuff is wearing armor, like my hat is my armor. And so I loved the concept. And when I saw her do that, that was my, oh my God, that's perfect because that's what, oh yeah, isn't, oh, I have those. These are my all-time favorite. I can't wear them too much. I am seal people. I consider myself seal people because there is family legend of Selkies within our family, in the Irish side of our family. And because I have webbed toes, and in Scotland and Ireland, those who have webbed toes and webbed fingers are thought to be sulky. Um, and so, or descended of Selkies. But these are sealskin earrings that she made me with the sweetgrass braid around them. So these are my, like, I love these. Oh, I know that name. But these are my ultimate all-time favorite. I need to, the hooks that she had on them were really small and uncomfortable, and so I changed them out, and those hooks are uncomfortable, so I need to change them out to just standard hooks. Not to put fancy hooks on them. See me go fancy. Um, but somebody was like, to a creator, not her, not Makata, Makwa. I think it's Makwa. Makata is bear, and I think that Makwa is her given name, and Makata is something having to do with the title. Like, I think that she uses Makwa as the name, and then Makata is something else. But Makwa, it wasn't Makwa, and it was somebody else, and she was like, "Listen, it may not be in your culture, but it is in my culture, and we use sweetgrass braid for everything, right?" Well, that's awesome. And so I'm like, I agree 100%. We have to stop deciding that because one group within Turtle Island does something, that another group within Turtle Island is supposed to do it as well, right? There are certain things that are cross-cultural, and there are many things that are not, right? I don't know James Henderson, though interestingly enough, my blood father that I found in 2020 is a Henderson, though um straight from Scotland, Henderson. So like it wouldn't be a tribal affiliate, but okay. I haven't gotten involved with the Micmac at all. Cat, Mama Cat, who is kind of my adopted mother, who is somebody we take care of each other quite a bit. She's Micmac, but she identifies as Acadian because she was raised Acadian. But I don't have a lot of, other than Makwa, and that's because I found Makwa on Facebook because she was amazeballs. But other than that, I don't know a lot of people. I think it's just because it's on the other side. Who's too cutesy? Cat, Mama Cat? Do you know who I'm talking about? Mama Cat. Oh my gosh. Or do you mean Makwa? Who is, oh, nice, nice, nice. Yeah. Then you know the people I'm talking about. But not Mama Tot, Mama Cat. Mama Cat's she's a tiny little street activist. Um, oh shit, I don't think I know where to find her. Um, Cat Trahan. Let me see if there's a picture here of her. She's been pretty much, she's a tiny little bald woman. Oh wait, there we go. That's a good picture of her. That's Mama Cat. Ah, that's a real good picture of her. That is her to the T. But she's Micmac. She identifies as Canadian. She's Micmac and something else. But she's the only person that I know who is who I've spent a lot of time with, who's Micmac. I believe Makwa is. I'd have to look again. Like I said, it's been a hot second, and I think it's Micmac that she identifies with. I know people from the area, but the people that I know over in that area are Anishinaabe, or Haudenosaunee. Because I have other people that I was with in Standing Rock who are over in that area who are Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, but not Micmac. I did see a lot of stuff, because all of the issues they've been having within the last year, couple years within their fishing industry and stuff. I have seen a lot of stuff coming across, and I have been following a lot of stuff. I just don't know a lot of people personally over there. Um, I do know Mama Tot though. I know that name, and I had a picture in my head, but it went away, and now I have to see if I can figure out that picture. We're off Neanderthals, by the way. um, so I do think that we have to look at the fact that we're just not a monolith, and I think that we look at that within all the other stuff too. Let me see if I get it. Well, we really do need everybody. And the reason I think, oh, he's gorgeous. What a sweetie. You can see that in his smile. I love his eyes. He's got gray eyes, doesn't he? Oh, he's got gray eyes. He is gorgeous and he looks kind. You can really see it in his eyes. And in that small, oh, and he's got crooked teeth. I love crooked teeth. Crooked teeth are my favorite. Unless he's poly, and I'm kind of avoiding penis right now. I have one and I really like the one that I have. And you kind of have to like weed through those who possess it to make sure that they're decent, like it's definitely way more inclined to happen within somebody who is indigenous. Absolutely. They're way more inclined to be more sacredly masculine. But it's, like, oh. Well, and I mean, I always think of myself as tradish, but I don't think other people think, well, see, and I don't see in my tradition, I don't think of it like that. Like to me, I don't believe of it so much like that. I do believe, and this is big for me, like I am very poly, like I don't settle, I can never do a singular person again. I've never been anything other than poly, though I was raised in the idea of polyamory. My parents were poly. The Islamic, group that we were with were not monogamous. I mean, that's not polyamorous. That's polygamy. Um, and I was raised with understanding that there were many different indigenous nations as well that were more polyamorous. And so I was just raised with this belief of it. And I tried monogamy with my second husband. There wasn't monogamy with my first husband. With my second husband, there was monogamy. My first husband was a lot of lying and cheating, even though we were poly, which was problematic. But my second husband was strictly monogamous, even though I would have encouraged him to go elsewhere. He wouldn't, but he would behind my back. Like he wouldn't do it in front of my face, but he would do it behind my back, and I'll never do monogamy again. Yes, how many horses you have and how you treat your mother. That's really important to me. And how your mother treats you, right? Like it's really important to me how your mother treats you back. It's important how you treat your mother, but if you treat your mother really, really positive and your mother's really, really negative to you or to other people around them, then I worry that you might be using narcissistic stuff, right? Yeah, yeah. My parents have been offered mead for the right of courting me before in my early 20s. It was adorable. Some huge hulking Viking warrior type at a medieval thing that we would attend um, brought my parents mead. Would like to walk with your daughter. It was adorable. I was like, oh. But I think we can see so many of these different things though, going back as far as we possibly can with humanity. Oh yeah, that's it, right? And we can see a lot of the food patterns. Did you read the article about them finding Neanderthal leftovers and flatbreads? And this is all in Shanidar Cave. So Shanidar Cave, again, Krebs, right? Um, Shanidar Cave is still being excavated. They started excavating it in the 50s and then they reopened it in the 2020s. I think it was 2002, 2001 that they reopened Shanidar Cave. And when they reopened Shanidar Cave, they started finding new finds, right? One of the things that they found was leftovers. And another thing that they found was a flatbread made out of grains and legumes like lentils, right? And this flatbread, really, I mean, it shows how foodie Neanderthals were. Oh, yeah, I do. I have a cauldron and a cup right outside my front door. Actually, I think I pulled them in because I haven't, um, the area that I'm in, it doesn't work as well as it should. But I usually keep a cauldron and a little clay cup outside of my front door, and I food, give offerings for food. Um, I also still feed spirits on my altar. I have like an altar in my house, and it's an ancestral thing. I do ancestral thought process more than anything, and so it's a connection altar for ancestral. Um, and I feed the spirits on that. Um, but I think that I don't know, for me, that's really cross-cultural as well. Like, there are so many different things that you can see that we have been utilizing as people so far back. If something is in every single culture across the globe that you can trace, or every single like there's an element of it in every single culture, then that to me tells me it's something that we've been doing since before we left Africa. The world tree is something that is in every single culture across the globe. Like at least all the cultures that I have found, I have yet to find a culture that doesn't have some idea of a world tree. Um, and so to me, the world tree is one of those things that is pre leaving Africa. It would have to be, right? It's pre leaving the Levant area at the very latest, because it is something that all the families that descend from those families that left that area carried with them. Um, Flatbread to me would be another one of those things, with this understanding that we find flatbread with the Neanderthals, and we find flatbreads in every culture across the globe, right? Um, Whether or not it was a flatbread made with grains can be a completely different thing. Like, there are groups over here who would process acorns and grind acorns up and make a kind of flatbread out of acorns, right? Um, Corn or masa, right? For making tortillas, which are a flatbread, right? So we see that flatbread is pretty much a global thing. And we see that as new things come in, there's adaptations. Why fry bread can be really popular today. Um, because it's definitely a commodity thing, right? We definitely get fry bread from early commodities and trying to make things work. But it's also a memory of the breads that we were using before, because we were using flatbreads before. We just weren't using flatbreads of a wheat-based variety that rose and were fried in fat, right? And so I think that that's one of those important things that we all share. We just like we all share the hunting of big animals and the wearing of fur, right? Hello, beautiful. And just like we all share decoration with feathers and decoration with beads. Beads go back to Africa. Like, beads go back to, I think, Erectus. No, not Erectus, Neanderthal. But beads go back to Africa. Like, we see beads before we left Africa, ostrich shell beads specifically. And so we absolutely see that ostrich shell beads. That might not be Africa, that might be Australia. I know there are shell beads in Africa. But ostrich eggs might be specific to Australia. I can't remember if there's ostriches in Africa. Anyways, do you follow Linda Black Elk? I'm totally willing to go and give my information anywhere. Like, I'm totally willing to sit down. Anybody who wants me to come in and speak, I am totally down, totally down. Linda Black Elk is she's a she's a daughter of Black Elk, a granddaughter of Nicholas Black Elk. But um, she does food. She does indigenous food, and she teaches how to. Let me see if I can find her. She's on my Facebook. Um, she she teaches. Here she is. Her and her husband. Oh, I hate that this camera just doesn't show pictures very well. But her and her husband teach indigenous food reclamation. And they do things like I've watched her go out and get squashes, and they'll take the squashes and they'll slice them in a spiral and they'll hang them from those spirals. They totally teach how to find your indigenous foods in your area. And they totally teach different cooking methods. And it's all on her Facebook page. I don't know if she has any other socials, but find her on Facebook. Um, she is amaze balls. And she does different, I think she goes around and actually teaches too, right? Like I think she'll even go into communities and teach. Um, and she also teaches language while she does it. She is, I believe, Lakota. Yes, Lakota. And she teaches language as she does it. So she's actually teaching like Lakota language as she's teaching food. She's if you're looking for food information, she is a go-to human being. And make sure that you get the one. Currently, God, what is that? Currently her background image. Oh, it doesn't state what this is. Sinkina, which is she does a whole lot of about food sovereignty. But this is the background picture. It looks almost like little, and I hate that it doesn't show it, but like almost like little bulbs. Let me see if it will do it better on a sideways. And that's the background. And then it's her and her husband. So it looks like that on the page. She's very obviously indigenous. The other people that I'm seeing on here that have Linda Black Elk under the search do not look obviously indigenous. She looks a little bit more coastal Dene maybe than Lakota in her facial structuring. Like she looks a little bit more coastal, maybe indigenous, but she's definitely indigenous. Awesome. That is like she is my go-to for any form of food sovereignty. I would absolutely take a look at her if you're looking for any form of food sovereignty education, because to my understanding, not only does she teach it publicly through social media, but she is also really willing to go into communities and speak within communities because sovereignty of food is just huge for her. So I believe she actually does some travel. Don't quote me on it. Like, don't go, hey, Widda said. I don't even think she knows who I am. But I do believe that I've seen her go into communities and teach, and I do know that she is very much like her family has always been, very much in trying to help return indigenous people to pre-colonized ways. Like trying to give us some sovereignty and stuff. For the other stuff, if you want somebody who's going to come in and tell you all the different things that archaeology and anthropology that is found that prove indigenous people correct, or give information down anytime, I'll even do it over video if it's easiest. I have absolutely no problem. Again, to me, that would not be like trying to teach people who they are or what they are, because I'm not going to do that, right? But giving an understanding A, that some stuff is very global, right? And B, that science is currently proving our elders correct, right? I think that for me is one of those big things that I want to be able to give Indigenous communities that I know of, that science is actually starting to prove us correct. Which it should have always, if it had been Indigenous science like we have from the very beginning, it would have. It was Western science and very biased. And so now we can see where it is actually like doubling down on our histories and our knowledge. Just because I believe that it's empowering to me, right? Hmm. Eating should absolutely be based on what our ancestors ate. That can be a bit more tricky when you have mixed genetics, as although we ate a lot of similar stuff, meat, roots, berries, etc. There are, and I'm going to assume the rest of that there are specifics to area. I think there would have been regional differences and adaptations based on that. Yeah, like lactose tolerance, right? Though that is something that we created within ourselves and affected within ourselves. Um, I absolutely agree. I think for those of us who are really mixed and are or who are no longer in our ancestral spaces, that eating locally in an indigenous manner, like honorable harvest manner, where you're not overeating everything and eating a bunch of shit, right? Over processed, overcooked kind of stuff. I think that that in and of itself will help. Just because I think that there's a lot of times that we don't have access to. So many of us are in diasporas because of colonialism, right? So many of us live in spaces that are hundreds of miles away from or thousands of miles away from where any of our ancestors lived, or where half of our ancestors lived and the other half lived there, right? And so it really does become a problem when you have so many different genetics within you to be able to, define what we should or shouldn't, right? Yeah, some people tolerate grains more, and that's real. I've always thought that I was tolerant to lactose, and yet recently I found that I've been identified as lactose intolerant by my doctors for decades. And as I am looking at it, I'm probably lactose intolerant. I feel better when I'm not drinking milk, right? Yeah. Well, and I don't always eat correctly, but as I grow older, I find, well, because I was raised eating correctly, thankfully, because I was raised on kind of like a foraging diet, anyways, because they did a lot of gleaning and stuff like that. Um, and dumpster diving, and doing their own, like, hunting and foraging anyways. Because of that, like, I can taste when there's a lot of processed in food or taste when there's, like, I can taste aspartame and it makes me ill. Like, the first taste of it makes me like, "Oh." So I become very it's been very hard for me to eat over the last couple of years because living in a city, I don't know where my food is coming from, and that's difficult for me. Like, um I am omnivoric and I love meat, but at the same point, it's like I love meat because I know that that animal was ethically killed, and I know that that animal was ethically raised or hunted, right? And I know that that animal was thanked, and I know that that animal was loved, right? And that's a lot of stuff that we can do with diet too. And I'm working on that. I am bad though, because I am one of those people that I love sugar. I'll admit it. I am addicted to sugar. And not only do I love sugar, but I also love chocolate, and I also love like quick and easy. I learned how to cook over an open fire. So I learned how to cook really basil, like really rooted, right? And so it wasn't until I was probably 20 that I ever used a box to cook something out of a box, and I burnt the shit the first not burnt it, but like fucked it up the first couple times I used a box food. So I have literally made everything from scratch my whole life. But I don't have a kitchen I can cook in, and cooking became really abusive towards the like not me being abusive, but I was like really screwed with over it towards the last, and it was such of my responsibility in my marriage, and then I've worked as a cook a couple times, and so, like, I have a problem cooking, and I can't cook a lot of the time these days, and so it's really hard for me because I have to have foods that I can get in a couple steps just so that I will be able to eat, but I have to have foods that aren't highly processed or, highly, crappy for your body, right? So it's been a it's and this has only been over the last couple of years. Like my food journey over the last couple of years has been really hard for me. Like it's been really weird for me because I've really changed, and being in the city has really changed everything about it. I've never lived in a city before 2017. This is the first time I've ever been in a space with more than 5,000 people, right? Like I think well, and I've never lived in a space with more than 500 people, but this is the first time I've ever been in a space really. I mean, I guess we kind of lived kind of in Spokane, but we really lived on the outskirts of Spokane, like never like downtown Spokane, right? And I can't even cook for others anymore. That's where it become problematic. Like I can't even cook for my kids. Like I feel if I walk into a kitchen and it's not completely clean, my entire body shuts down. And if I am cooking, I get resentful. I don't like to do it anymore. Like I get resentful when I cook. And I really try not to do things that make me resentful towards people, like it's not the joy and the love that it used to be. And for me, cooking, I was often thought of myself as a kitchen witch because cooking, there's a lot of the magic in making food. And so like I often thought of myself as a kitchen witch. Um, which makes it hard to cook because if your intentions are frustrated and angry because you're doing it and you believe that that magic and that energy goes into it, you don't want to fucking put that magic and that energy into it, right? That's why I stopped beading too, because my brain was not working in a way that I could bead without the energy going into it being a negative energy. I am probably going to last like 15 more minutes and then I'm probably going to take off. On chemical peel diet wine works. Um, I'm probably going to go about 15 more minutes and then I'm going to go ahead and take off. If they do not put my live access back up on TikTok, we will be here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard. And we'll see, where it goes. It might be in Neanderthals. We were doing a little bit on medicine, not medicine, rights yesterday or Sunday. I love to cook and sing. I do love to sing and dance and like cook and clean. That's a huge thing for me. If I can have music on and I move, it's a lot easier for me. I have found over the last couple of years, I do a lot less musical stuff though. Like I listen to music a lot less, I think. But that's because when I listen to music alone, my brain, when I'm ruminating badly, will not like it'll ruminate, right? Is it 4 a.m. Wednesday morning for you right now, or do you mean at 8 p.m. tomorrow night? Is 10 on Sunday? That is like 10 p.m. is 6 a.m. for you? I thought 8 p.m. was 6 a.m. Is it 4 a.m.? So 8 p.m. my time is 4 a.m. your time? See, I'm trying to get these lives so that I can make sure that you get to be in them because I love and adore you. You're one of my favorite people. And because we're on a different, in different parts of the planet, I'm like, well, I want to make sure that, my favorite people can be in there from other 8 hours ahead. So 10 is 6 a.m. So 10 a.m. is 6 p.m. Maybe I should move my AM lives later a little bit. I think I was doing them that early because of But it would probably help my sleeping too if I didn't have to do it at 8 a.m. We will one day. Second generation, they will. I'll look into that, pretty. The only rap I listen to actually is Indigenous rap. Superman is one of my favorite artists. I love Superman. Nice. Okay, I'll totally look into that. But if it's 8 a.m., that means that it's 4 p.m. So if it's 10 a.m., it means that it's 6 p.m., right? You're home by 6 p.m. usually. I know you're working during the morning, so the mornings are harder anyways. And honestly, staying up till midnight is not my bag. And I'm working on it. I am using all of the income from TikTok to go to my back child support. So once my back child support is clear, I'll have that passport and I'll be able to get out of this godforsaken place. Oh, look up this one. Look up Superman, Let Him Go. That song is. I don't know if I can do it from this. Oh, I know I can do it from this. Hold on a second. So 10 a.m. Friday for me would be 6 p.m. Friday for you, and you would not be home. But 10 a.m. today, like right now is coming up on 6 p.m. your time, and you are home. This is like one of my all-time favorite songs. Hold on.
Just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. Governments destroy freedom. The major media destroys information. And religions destroy spirituality. Billy Ills in the place to be. And I got what it takes to rock the mic right. Yo, half the world starving. The others trying to lose weight. Judging each other on who's great, yo, and who's fake. I choose faith and elevate through all my lucid dreaming. And wake up and celebrate all the human beings. My mom said it's a blessing when they try to stop you. This is that rhyming up in third eye, align your chakras. Spark this to the darkness, what I teach is dangerous. I'm just trying to free my people from the deepest anguish. I've seen evil spirits from the matrix respond to the name of Jesus in the English language. Was it the God in me or am I blinded? Was it terminology or goodness behind it? We got a long way to go to get back to where we were. This life is a mystery, eyes are very blurred. No matter what religion you follow, I respect it. We all human beings, that means we all connected. They want to tell you what you can and what you can't do, but everything traditional was once brand new. Jump on social media, change my Wikipedia, find out where they're leading you and what they feeding you. Hey, yo, it's evil. How bad they want their money. They let us eat food that's banned in other countries. It's a damn shame how they campaign by a brand name champagne, but I can't blame. We all got free will to choose like hand games. We all got free will to choose like hand games. Prayers up, tobacco down, healing frequencies. Now that's the sound. Human beings, Mexico, kids in cages. Now let them go. Prayers up, tobacco down, healing frequencies. Now that's the sound. Human beings, Mexico, kids in cages. Now let them go. Let them go. Let them go.
What I love about Superman is almost every track that I've heard, in fact, every track that I personally have heard is educational, and it is a positive, right? It's looking at the negatives and going, we need to change this. Why don't we look at it in this way, right? And that's for me. I mean, I'm not a rap fan at all. I don't like rap. Because it's often violent, because it's often derogatory, because I love the beat. I am always a beat person. I am a drums person. Um, a traditional drum person. Like traditional drums have always been my thing. From my earliest memories, my first, well, second poem. My first poem that I wrote on my own was Hoya, 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 ho, as I dance around the fire, drum beats in my soul as I dance around the fire. Step to the left, step to the right as I dance around the fire. Drum beats in my soul as I dance around the fire, right? Drum beats are an innate part of who I am. But uh so I love rap because of the beat to rap, but I don't like the negativity that's often in rap. And I really love Superman. He's got Let Him Go. He's got another song that really focuses on the unaliving that happens in young people on the res on such a huge basis, and trying to return that healing to people to get them to see that it is horrific, but they are still necessary to make that change to help us forward, right? And then he has a couple of songs on different things. One of them opens up, and the first half of the song is a lecture that is beautiful that talks about what was done to the indigenous people, right? Like some college professor, and they took that and they put it as the front of it, right? So it's very awesome. Yeah. So I would absolutely, if I were you, check out him and Rising Appalachia. Superman and Rising Appalachia. I might have spelled Appalachia wrong. Um, Rising Appalachia is a pair of Appalachian siblings, sisters, who I'm pretty sure they're also indigenous, but I'm not positive. Who do folk music, and it's all very very protesty, right? Very, and I mean protesty in the same sense that Superman's is. It's very much about awakening people. That's the best way to put it. It's very much about awakening people. It's very much music about uh, developing understanding for people to see. Like my favorite line from Let 'Em Go that they're excavating. I'm hoping that they start excavating the Whitman one here. We're really close to the Whitman residential school. And actually, I was able to, the one dig that I was able to go for half a day that I talk about where I ended up leaving crying was there. And it wasn't the school itself, it was a mill next to the school that we were excavating. So it wasn't involved in that, but they were talking about starting to do that this year, I think. Um, and I would have really loved to go back for that. But again, like my physical capabilities, of course they won't. Right. Um, I would say that archaeologists currently are supposed to be doing this huge focus on indigenous groups and listening to indigenous groups. That's supposed to be the hugest part of what they're doing. They're not in some places. They are more so in other places, but there's a lot of rules and strictures in place now that state that they're supposed to. So if you know that they are doing a dig somewhere close by and you decide to go to that dig site, just go and tell them, listen, I'm indigenous and this is my community and I want to ensure that you're doing it right. Do you have questions? I can tell you things that you might need to know, but you need to ensure that you're honoring my ancestors. So I'm going to stay here to ensure that you're honoring my ancestors, right? Um, or listen, this is what we want from you. We need to make sure that you're doing it this way, right? I do know that it's hard to do that because of the fact that in the past they haven't listened, right? There's been no listening within the archaeological or anthropological community when it comes to Indigenous Turtle Island remains. And I do know that that's a very hard one because of that. But I do know, being in the field now, that there are specific rules in place right now. And they specifically are supposed to start to, like they're specifically supposed to be listening to the communities. They are specifically, anything that is found is specifically supposed to be going to the elders of the communities and going, hey, listen, we found this. What is the correct way to deal with this? Would you like somebody to come out and deal with this? Right. So this is supposed to be going on, which means not that it is going on, but that you can show up and you can say, hey, fuckers, I know I have people in the community and they have told me that this is what you're supposed to be doing. So, we want to make sure. But yeah, you or encourage the community if it's not nearby, encourage the community. Anytime that they're doing, especially in the residential schools, the community should absolutely be out there, right? The community should absolutely be having a say. We do not have enough Indigenous people in archaeology within Turtle Island anyways. And so really, many archaeologists are encouraging Indigenous people to get involved in these things because they want to, in the newer understanding, be better, right? Because there are Indigenous people and Black people and people of other communities that are non-white communities that have started entering into archaeology and anthropology who are really big on that, right? So that can be something that you can use to empower not only yourself, but the groups around you. Anything that is done within any dig, any dig, any dig deserves representation from Turtle Island Indigenous people being there and is absolutely something that they're supposed to be doing by law, right? And to the point that if a Turtle Island Indigenous person from that community shows up, they're not supposed to remove them, right? You are supposed to be able to go and oversee what's going on. That is within the legalities right now. Having oversight from the Indigenous communities is an absolute necessity. Sleepy. Kumri is the land and Kumrai are the people? Or is it Kumrai is the land and Kumri are the people? Or is it Kumri is the land and the people and Kumrai is the language? I just want to make sure that I'm being correct when I use it. I have to make sure that I'm completely correct or I continue to use the old words because otherwise I feel I'm wrong and I get scared of being wrong. And so I want to make sure that I'm completely correct because I know that it will help me to use it more because being correct means I'll use it more without feeling like I'm butchering Indigenous language, which is really huge for me. No butchering of Indigenous languages. And then I'm probably going to go because I'm cycling and I need to make sure I take care of that. And I also need to go and come. And I'm saying coom instead of come, aren't I? I did that again. Cymru. Okay. And then Cymrai is language. Cymru is country and people. Cymrai is the language. That's the other thing is I have to stop saying coom and start saying come. If you guys spelled it C-U-M, we'd all know to pronounce it come, just saying. Sleepy and I have had discussions because Sleepy's like, it's a very phonetic language. And I'm like, your idea of phonetics are not my idea of phonetics. I'm an American English person. We don't phonetic the same way anybody else does. Cymraeg. Okay, Cymraeg. Where am I getting Cymraeg from? Am I just conflating Cymraeg and Cymrai? It must be. So Cymraeg is language. It's phonetic based on the Welsh alphabet, which is a great alphabet. It's a beautiful. I've always find Cymraeg to be a beautiful language, like the flow of it. I actually there was a book that did a Gaelic and had Cymraeg in it, and a saying or what it called a charm of making in Cymraeg, and I was enthralled just because of the flow of Cymraeg. It has this very lyrical flow to it, right? But phonetic based on the Welsh alphabet is the perfect way to put it because Sleepy tells me it's phonetic, and I'm like, uh-huh, sure. That doesn't. I'm telling you what I hear phonetically, which doesn't help because I pronounce Colonel Colonel and have since I was young. It took the military for me to no longer pronounce it colonel. You don't want to call a colonel a colonel. And cinnamon took a long time too. It was cinnamon for a long time. I'm not a very phonetic person, anyways, unfortunately. Okay, so I think maybe we'll push Friday. Well, Friday morning, it's not going to matter. Anyways, are you still working at 6 p.m. Friday? Tomorrow night will be 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But I think it might be better if I just push the morning ones back, Sleepy, because I think 10 o'clock, my time being 6 o'clock, your time, might give a better ability to come in and participate and be a part. And it will actually be better for me because trying to do it at 8 a.m. can be a little bit exhausting. And I don't really have other things in the morning anymore. I was doing acupuncture in the morning. Lan fer pilgua gulgua grishum windro. There are 4 L's there. I just want to say that's 4 L's right there. That's 4. 4. I know what a double L does. What do 4 L's do? Well, I might be able to catch you at the end when you come home on Friday because I'll go for a couple of hours in the morning. But at least I'll definitely be able to make sure that I can see you on Tuesday mornings. Yeah, I know it's hilarious. I know it's hilarious. That's why I do it because I know it's funny enough to be amusing without being rude. I want to know what 4 L's do, though. You're going to have to tell me what 4 L's do. Okay, so I will be back at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow night. Probably on here if TikTok hasn't opened back up lives. If it has, I'll be on both. And then what we'll do is we'll start pushing the AM ones back 2 hours just because of the fact that that'll actually be easier for me anyways. And then it makes it evening time in Europe and other countries, which makes it easier, I feel like. Well, oh, and you changed the way that I say Llewellyn before because it's not you said it has a different element to it in the front of the word that I know when I hear it and it sounds right, but I can't remember. Oh well. We'll talk about it more. As I leave, cat hiss. Llewellyn. So flu. It's interesting to watch me say it too, because you can see the. And stickers are up. I have some stickers on the website just because they're cheap. But this is turning the glass ceiling into forest floor so we can breathe once more. And they all have a QR on them so that if you put them on something, somebody can scan it and find my website, which will lead them to everything. So Uh, these are only a couple bucks on the website. They're the cheapest thing I was able to get up there. I'm going to get stickers, not stickers, but pins up there as well because I'm going to put this on a pin on my hat. But if you're looking for just cheap things to be able to have verbiages, all of the stickers have cheap verbiages on them. And and I also have like sticker sheets that have multiples on them, so you can take them and like toss them on different things if you want to. Um, but I do know that people were looking for different things that had little sayings on them. So this is a cheap way to do them because my pricing is based on the website itself because it's a print site, and they charge their own self. So this is the cheapest thing I could find. Have a great day. Enjoy you all so much. And thank you all for the conversation today. I really like the YouTube just because it has that conversational element that's a little bit different, just because TikTok can become so fucking trolly. So I will see you guys soon. Have a great day. Love you so much. Bye.